The Philippine Sea is not the Persian Gulf. It is deeper, colder, and acoustically very different. A deep water environment, where sound travels in ways that the shallow, thermally cluttered waters of the Hormuz approaches do not permit. Where a submarine operating at the right depth can take advantage of the deep sound channel to move in near silence for extended periods. And where the convergence zone geometry, the phenomenon by which sound refracted through the deep sound channel resurfaces at predictable ranges, makes passive sonar detection both potentially longer-ranged and considerably more geometrically complex than in the confined waters where the IRIN's Kilo operates. It is, in short, the environment for which the People's Liberation Army Navy's submarine force has been training and equipping since the mid-1990s, and the environment in which the plan's growing fleet of air-independent propulsion submarines is most capable. The Philippine Sea is submarine country. The question on any given day is which submarines. The Yuan-class Type 039A is the plan's most capable non-nuclear submarine in current operational service. It displaces approximately 3,600 tons submerged, significantly larger than the Kilo, and is equipped with a Stirling cycle AIP system that allows it to remain submerged on electric drive for periods that conventional diesel-electric submarines cannot approach. A conventional diesel-electric submarine must surface or snorkel regularly to run its diesel engines and recharge its battery banks. The Yuan's AIP system runs on stored liquid oxygen and diesel fuel in a closed cycle that produces electricity with no exhaust products that require venting to the atmosphere, which means the submarine can remain submerged without snorkeling for 2 to 3 weeks, depending on its speed and power demand. At ultra-quiet speeds of 2 to 3 knots on AIP power, the Yuan's acoustic signature approaches the ambient noise floor of the deep ocean. Not invisibility. Nothing is invisible, but close enough to the noise floor that detecting it requires the right sensor in the right geometry, operated by a crew that knows what they are listening for. The plan has built approximately 20 of them. They have been practicing. This matters. Aboard USS Benfold, DDG-65, an Arleigh Burke Flight 2A destroyer, the morning watch is maintaining station in the Philippine Sea approximately 340 nautical miles east of Luzon, conducting the surface presence and intelligence collection mission that has occupied the ship for the past 7 days. The operating area places her in the broad water between the Philippine archipelago and the Mariana Islands, an expanse of ocean that commercial satellite imagery, planned surface ships, and PLA maritime patrol aircraft have been observing continuously since USS Benfold entered the area. This is expected. This is in fact the point. A U.S. Navy destroyer operating in the Philippine Sea is a message about freedom of navigation, alliance credibility, and the willingness of the United States to be present in waters that the People's Republic of China considers within its sphere of operational control. The message is sent. The message is being received. What the watch team cannot determine from their surface picture is whether one of the contacts receiving the message is submerged. The time is 7:14. The surface picture is routine. The air picture is routine. The MH-60R Seahawk that would normally provide the ship's acoustic reach into the water column, equipped with the AQS-22 airborne laser mine detection system and the capability to deploy sonobuoys and operate a dipping sonar, is on the flight deck undergoing a scheduled 28-day airframe inspection that the maintenance schedule placed in this operating period, with the specific timing that maintenance schedules achieve through a combination of engineering necessity and what the crew has collectively decided to describe as situational irony. The inspection started yesterday. It will be complete in approximately 36 hours. The ship's towed array sonar, the AN/SQR-19, is the primary acoustic sensor available, and the ship has been operating with it deployed since entering the operating area. The towed array is capable. The towed array is listening. The tactical action officer reviewed the acoustic picture at watch changeover at 0000, at 0400, and again at 0700. Nothing unusual. The Philippine Sea ambient acoustic environment is what it always is. Shipping, biological noise, the steady oceanic background that experienced sonar operators learned to parse through years of work. At 7:14, the towed array operator reports something unusual. The contact is faint. It is on the array's bearing resolution at approximately 210 degrees, south-southwest. The operator has been listening to the Philippine Sea for 4 days and knows the background well enough to notice that something on bearing 210 is not the background. It is not identifiable. It is not classifiable. It is a difference in what the array is hearing on that bearing compared to the ambient baseline, and the difference is consistent in its character, with a very quiet mechanical source at a range that the array's bearing-only geometry cannot resolve. The operator has been working with underwater acoustics long enough to know that the inability to classify something is itself a classification category. Something is on bearing 210. She reports it. The tactical action officer receives the contact report at 7:14:31. He looks at the bearing. He looks at the geographic picture. Bearing 210 from their current position. Places the contact source in the direction of the Philippine Sea's deep water to the south-southwest. He looks at the towed array's recent history on that bearing. Clean until approximately 6:47. Something changed at 6:47. He notes this. He reports to the commanding officer. The commanding officer is in the Combat Information Center within 4 minutes, which is the amount of time it takes a commanding officer who has been in elevated awareness posture for 7 days to move from the place he was to the place he needs to be. Here is the vulnerability window, and it is the most extended one in this series, and the one that most completely depends on a single piece of equipment being unavailable. The MH-60R Seahawk, with its dipping sonar and sonobuoy capability, is the tool that would allow USS Benfold to range out from the towed array's bearing-only information and develop a localization solution on the contact. The towed array gives bearing. A helicopter with a dipping sonar gives range and bearing from a different position. 2 bearing lines from 2 different positions on the same contact produce a crossfix, a specific location, rather than a direction. Without the helicopter, USS Benfold is working from a single bearing line. A single bearing line tells the watch team which direction something is. It does not tell them how far away it is, whether it is moving or whether it is getting closer. The contact on bearing 210 could be 12 miles away or 30 miles away. It could be stationary or moving at 4 knots in any direction. All the towed array can say with certainty is that it is to the south-southwest, and it is quieter than most things that the ship would normally worry about. The P-8A Poseidon from VP-26 that has been periodically supporting the patrol area is at NAS Kadena in Okinawa, approximately 1,400 nautical miles to the northwest. The crew is available. The aircraft is available. The transit time to the operating area at the P-8's cruise speed is approximately 3 hours and 40 minutes. 3 hours and 40 minutes is a long time to work a towed array, bearing on a contact that may or may not be a Yuan-class submarine at ultra-quiet AIP speeds. The commanding officer makes the call to fleet at 7:19. Request expedited P-8 support, possible subsurface contact, bearing-only track, MH-60R in maintenance status. Fleet acknowledges. The P-8 crew at Kadena receives the tasking at 7:24. The crew begins their pre-flight at 7:24. They will be airborne by 7:52. They will be over the contact area by 11:32 at the earliest, assuming favorable transit weather. The contact on bearing 210 has been there since at least 6:47. It will, in all probability, still be there at 11:32. A Yuan on AIP at 3 knots will have moved approximately 14 nautical miles in that time. The bearing line will have shifted. The contact will still be there. Probably. This is the vulnerability window. Not 60 seconds. Not 14 minutes. 3 hours and 41 minutes of a bearing-only track on a probable subsurface contact with the primary localization asset in maintenance. For 3 hours and 41 minutes, USS Benfold knows something is to her south-southwest, and she does not know what, and she does not know how close, and the tool that would tell her is sitting on the flight deck with its inspection panels open.
Now let us talk about the Yuan-class Type 039A, because the submarine that may be on bearing 210 deserves to be understood with the accuracy that the planned submarine force has earned.
The Type 039A entered planned service in the mid-2000s and represents a genuine generational advance over the Romeo and Ming-class submarines that preceded it in the plan inventory. The Sterling AIP system is not an improvisation or a copy. It is a licensed technology developed from Swedish Kockum's designs that the plan acquired, adapted, and integrated into a hull that was engineered from the beginning to accommodate it. The result is a submarine that can transit at snorkel depth on diesels, arrive in an operating area, switch to AIP, and then operate submerged for 2 to 3 weeks with a noise signature that, at low speeds, approaches the level that makes passive detection genuinely difficult. The torpedo inventory, U-6 wake-homing torpedoes, YJ-18 anti-ship missiles via torpedo tube launch, and the ability to deploy mines, gives the UN a credible strike capability against surface combatants. The submarine that the plan has been deploying in the Philippine Sea in increasing numbers over the past several years is not a museum piece. It is not a training asset. It is a modern, capable submarine operated by crews that have been training with sustained professional seriousness, and that log significantly more sea time than the planned submarine force logged a decade ago. The bearing-only contact on the towed array at bearing 210 is, if it is a Yuan, a contact that USS Benfold needs to take seriously. The watch team is taking it seriously. The towed array operator has been refining her analysis of the bearing 210 contact since the initial report, and at 0732, she reports an update that adds a dimension to the picture. The contact on 210 has a very faint tonal, she says. The tonal is a specific frequency, a narrow band signal at a particular hertz value that stands above the broadband noise floor. Tonals are produced by rotating machinery. Propellers, pumps, generators, and motors all produce tonal signatures at frequencies related to their rotation rate. The Yuan's AIP system's Sterling engine produces characteristic tonals at frequencies that differ from diesel-electric alternatives. The tonal on bearing 210 is faint. Very faint is the operator's description, which in the vocabulary of underwater acoustics means it is at the edge of detection rather than comfortably above it. But it is there, and it is specific, and it is not matching anything in the background library. What frequency? The commanding officer asks. The tonal frequency is reported. The tactical action officer looks at the threat library. The frequency is within the range associated with Sterling cycle AIP machinery. It is not in the specific database entry for Yuan-class tonals, because the Yuan's acoustic signature under operational AIP conditions has not been directly measured at close range by a U.S. Navy asset under real operating conditions. The database entry for UN tonals is built from acoustic recordings collected during plan exercises, from analysis of hydrophone arrays in the Western Pacific, and from cooperative data shared by allied navies that have operated in UN operating areas. The entry is reasonably detailed. The tonal on bearing 210 falls in the right frequency neighborhood without being an exact match, which could mean the contact is a UN variant with slightly different AIP machinery parameters, or it could mean it is something else in that frequency range, or it could mean the measurement is at the edge of resolution and the identification is tentative. The commanding officer understands all of this. He tells the tactical action officer to log the tonal, continue the track, and wait for the P8. The wait is 3 hours and 17 minutes. During those 3 hours and 17 minutes, the towed array operator maintains her focus on bearing 210 with the sustained attention of someone doing detailed work in a degraded information environment, drawing the maximum possible information out of a signal that is, by most acoustic intelligence standards, barely there. At 8:11, the bearing shifts slightly to bearing 207, a 3-degree bearing change in 57 minutes. If the contact is at 20 miles range, a 3-degree bearing change in 57 minutes corresponds to a speed of approximately 2.5 to 3 knots moving from west to east across the line of bearing. This is consistent with an AIP submarine on slow transit. The operator reports the bearing change. The update goes in the contact record. The picture is building. At 8:44, the bearing shifts again, back to bearing 208. The operator notes this. The pattern of small bearing oscillations is consistent with a submarine that is not maintaining a steady course and speed, but is instead moving in a way that produces a slowly drifting bearing. This is what a submarine making slight course corrections at low speed looks like from a towed array. The operator has logged enough similar contacts in exercises to recognize the signature. She tells the tactical action officer that in her assessment, the contact is moving and the motion pattern is consistent with a submarine on AIP transit. She's careful to note that the assessment is based on bearing-only data from a marginal tonal and should be treated as tentative until the P8 arrives with triangulation capability. The tactical action officer logs the assessment. The update goes to Fleet. Fleet acknowledges. The P8 is 2 hours out. Below decks, the electronic warfare officer has been monitoring the electromagnetic environment on bearing 210 since the contact was first reported, on the possibility that the contact might snorkel, which would require it to run its radar altimeter for navigation safety and potentially emit other detectable signals. There is nothing on bearing 210. No radar emissions, no communications traffic, no snorkel detection. This is consistent with a submarine on AIP that is not snorkeling. It is also consistent with the contact being something entirely non-submarine and non-electromagnetic that the EW suite would have no basis to detect. The absence of EW contact is noted, but not conclusive. The EW officer continues monitoring. Shuck! The P8 arrives over the operating area at 11:31. The crew has been briefed via data link during transit and arrives with the contact history, bearing track, tonal frequency, bearing drift analysis, already loaded into their tactical picture. The acoustic sensor operator deploys the first DFAR sonobuoy at 11:33, at a range and bearing calculated to place it on the probable bearing line of the towed array contact. A DFAR buoy provides directional bearing information. A second buoy, deployed at 11:36 at a different position, provides a second bearing line. The intersection of two bearing lines from two different positions is a localization fix. The first buoy returns a contact at 11:34, bearing consistent with the towed array track. Tonal frequency confirmation. The buoy's acoustic processor matches the tonal to a frequency that the threat library identifies as consistent with a Yuan-class AIP system at low power. The match confidence is medium-high. The second buoy returns a contact bearing at 11:37. The intersection of the two bearing lines places the contact at approximately 23 nautical miles south-southwest of USS Benfold's current position, at an estimated depth consistent with the deep sound channel's convergence zone geometry. The fix is accurate to within approximately 2 nautical miles. The contact is 23 miles away. The P8's acoustic sensor operator deploys a third buoy, a LOFAR, passive listening buoy optimized for the low-frequency tonal range, at 11:39. The LOFAR buoy processes the tonal at its highest fidelity setting. At 11:42, the acoustic sensor operator makes a determination. Classification: Yuan-class Type 039A. Confidence: high. AIP power mode confirmed. Speed estimated 2 to 3 knots. Course: approximately east-southeast. She transmits the classification to USS Benfold and to Fleet. The contact is classified. It is a Yuan. It has been operating in the vicinity of USS Benfold's patrol area for approximately 4 hours and 45 minutes since the first bearing anomaly at 6:47. It is 23 miles away and making 2 to 3 knots. It is moving away from USS Benfold, east-southeast, which suggests the submarine's crew has detected the P8's arrival. The aircraft's approach, while quiet, is not acoustic silence. and a submarine crew that has been in the area for this long has been listening carefully and has assessed that the operating environment has changed in a way that favors a course change. The operational picture is now complete. The submarine is located. The submarine is classified. The submarine is tracked. USS Benfold has the contact, and the P-8 has the contact, and Fleet has the contact. The Yuan is at 23 miles and moving. It is not a threat at this moment. It has not been a threat in the sense of weapons release during the period it has been in the area. It has been a surveillance asset, observing USS Benfold's operating patterns, recording the ship's acoustic and electromagnetic signature, building the kind of operational intelligence on U.S. Navy destroyer behavior that planned submarine doctrine calls for during peacetime shadowing operations. These operations are entirely legal. A submarine in international waters in peacetime can do exactly this. The plan has been doing exactly this with increasing frequency and capability in the Philippine Sea. This morning's contact is the latest example of a pattern that has been building for years. What the UN did not collect because it could not have known that the P-8 was going to arrive and develop a precise localization solution is the LOFAR, tonal frequency characterization, that the acoustic sensor operator logged at 11:42. The tonal frequency of this specific hull's AIP system, measured under operational conditions at close range, is now in the acoustic threat library as a confirmed direct measurement. The existing entry for Yuan-class AIP tonals was built from lower confidence collection at longer range. Today's measurement is from a buoy deployed at 23 miles from the contact, close enough that the tonal is well above the noise floor in the LOFAR analysis. The frequency is measured to a precision that the existing entry had characterized only to a range. The precise frequency is in the record. It will update the entry. The update will improve future detection probability calculations for U.S. Navy and allied ASW platforms operating in the Western Pacific. The P-8 maintains acoustic contact on the Yuan for 2 hours and 14 minutes as it transits east-southeast. The contact history during those 2 hours, the bearing track, speed variations, course corrections, and the point at which the submarine appears to accelerate and deepen, suggesting it has cleared the operating area and is transitioning to a faster transit mode, is all logged, all processed, and all transmitted to the Theater ASW intelligence program. The full acoustic picture of a Yuan-class AIP submarine operating under real operational conditions in the Philippine Sea deepwater environment, from AIP quiet transit through apparent detection of the P-8's arrival and subsequent evasive maneuvering, is the most complete, single-contact tactical acoustic intelligence product collected on a Yuan in the Pacific Fleet's operational history. The collection report runs to 41 pages. The report covers the towed array detection, the bearing drift analysis, the P-8 localization and classification, the LOFAR tonal frequency measurement, the behavioral analysis of the contact's response to the P-8 arrival, and the implications of the observed AIP signature for detection threshold calculations. The report is transmitted to Pacific Command's ASW intelligence program at 1422. It goes to the Naval Undersea Warfare Center, which maintains the ASW acoustic threat library. It goes to the alliance partners who operate submarine forces and ASW assets in the Western Pacific, Japan, South Korea, Australia, through established intelligence sharing channels. The LOFAR tonal frequency measurement alone generates specific interest responses from 3 allied ASW programs within 48 hours of receipt. The Yuan-class submarine completes its transit and presumably returns to its home base. The crew did their job. They observed a U.S. Navy destroyer for the better part of a morning, recorded its operating patterns, and departed when the ASW picture changed. Their mission produced intelligence for the plan. The P-8's mission produced 41 pages for everyone else. Aboard USS Benfold, the Seahawk inspection continues. It will be complete tomorrow. The flight deck will be available tomorrow. Today, the ship has a confirmed Yuan contact at 23 miles moving away, a classified acoustic tonal measurement, and a 41-page report that has already left the ship. The commanding officer
is writing his situation report at the chart table. The situation report covers the detection timeline, the MH-60R status, the P8 support request, the contact history, and the classification result. It is thorough. It takes 40 minutes to write to the standard he requires. He completes it at 15:09. He reads it once. He signs it. He transmits it. Then, he addresses the coffee situation, which has been deferred since 7:14, when the contact report arrived, and will be addressed now because it is 15:09, and the coffee situation has been deferred long enough. The pot that was made at 7 o'clock is no longer a discussion. He orders fresh coffee. The fresh coffee arrives at 15:14. It is excellent. It is the first genuinely good coffee since before the bearing 210 contact appeared on the towed array. The contact is gone. The collection is transmitted. The Seahawk will be ready tomorrow. The Philippine Sea is deep and dark and entirely indifferent to the morning's events, which is what it always is, and which is the correct outcome for a patrol area on a Wednesday morning. Now let us discuss what Beijing said happened, which is to say nothing, because the plan does not discuss its submarine operations in public forums, and the Chinese Ministry of National Defense does not issue press releases about Pacific submarine transits. The absence of a statement is itself the statement. A navy that is doing what the plan is doing, deploying capable AIP submarines in sustained surveillance operations against U.S. Navy surface combatants in the Philippine Sea, does not announce this capability. It demonstrates it. The demonstration was received. The 41 pages are the receipt. The defense correspondent who covers the plan for a Western news organization will eventually report, 3 weeks from now, that senior U.S. Pacific Command officials describe Chinese submarine activity in the Philippine Sea as increasingly capable and persistent. The correspondent will not have access to the 41 pages. The correspondent will attribute the characterization to unnamed officials. The characterization will be accurate. The LOFAR, tonal measurement, that explains one specific way in which the capability is increasingly precise, will not appear in the story, because it is classified, and because even if it were not, the correspondent does not know to ask about it. The acoustic threat library has been updated. The P8 crew is back at Kadena. The Seahawk inspection at USS Benfold is proceeding on schedule. The Philippine Sea is quiet. Tomorrow the Seahawk will fly. The day after, it will fly again. The operating area will continue. The towed array will continue listening. Bearing 210 is empty. For now. Bye for now.